cannot wait. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be amazing. But first, let's talk, because this week was rough. People on both sides of the political divide saw a few of their nightmares come true this week, and we should try to learn something from this. Look, on both sides, left and right, people have power, just in different ways, different places. The right wing has power at the top of our government, mainly in the White House. And liberals' big fear is that Trump will recklessly abuse his power and his influence and put vulnerable people at risk. On the left, we got power too at the top of our culture, places like Hollywood, universities, social movements like Black Lives Matter. And the conservatives are afraid that we're going to recklessly abuse our power and unfairly brand and treat them. Well, congratulations, America. Both nightmares came true this week, okay? And you can see the danger now of all this overheated rhetoric and people rushing to judgment on both sides. On the one hand, cops arrested a Coast Guard officer who they describe as a white nationalist. Now, authorities say he was stockpiling weapons. He planned to have a massive attack against civilians. And the hit list of people he wanted to kill included Democratic lawmakers like Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and apparently he also wanted to kill TV hosts at MSNBC and even right here at CNN. It's the second time in less than 6 months that journalists and critics of the president have become targets of potential violence on a huge scale, and that is terrifying. Now look, obviously there's other factors at play, but you cannot fully discount the heated words coming from the highest office in the land. When the head of the U.S. military, the commander-in-chief, calls himself a nationalist and calls the media the true enemy of the people, somebody in uniform might take him seriously, and the consequences could be horrific. So in addition to all the bad policies attacking immigrants and transgender people, this is exactly the kind of stuff that liberals worry about, that Trump might be aiding or abetting the spread of hatred and right-wing extremism. Mr. President, please be more careful. At the same time, many of us, and especially some conservatives, are shaking their heads in disgust at the conduct of a Hollywood actor and activist. Chicago police say that Jussie Smollett, quote unquote, took advantage of the pain and anger of racism and staged a hoax attack on himself to get a pay raise. Okay, now there's a lot that's wrong here. First of all, this is a tragic fall of an icon. You know, Smollett's rise to fame as a black gay character, it was historic. It helped to push back on homophobia in the black community. If the police account is accurate, and they got a lot of evidence now, Smollett has betrayed millions of people who looked up to him and needed him to be that icon. And also, given the rise of hate crimes, this hoax actually hurts real victims, and that's totally unfair. But it's not just about blaming Smollett. We got to look in the mirror. Two white men spewing racial epithets with a lynching rope, screaming, "This is MAGA country." Were we a little bit too willing to rush to judgment and assume the worst about Trump supporters? Is that fair? And also, the people who questioned the story, they got called racist and homophobes too, just for being skeptical. Have we created now a world where people cannot question a claim of bias without being called bigots themselves? That's not good. So progressives, please be more careful. I say this because we've got another political firestorm on the way. Almost 2 years, 34 people charged, 7 guilty pleas, hours of cable TV analysis, $25 million, and 166 tweets from Trump calling it a witch hunt. It looks like we finally have the Mueller probe coming to an end. So please be careful, because I predict a whole bunch of confusion, more partisan spin from people who haven't even read the report, which is exactly what we don't need. Before you've even had a chance to read whatever they release, you're going to have 1,000 posts on your social media feeds, either claiming that Trump has been fully cleared or saying lock him up, depending on whatever camp you're in. Slow down. Be vigilant. Focus on facts, not spin. And think twice before you click that share button, because America's enemies now know how to weaponize information and push your buttons. You can't just blame Trump or blame Hollywood celebrities or blame Facebook. We are doing the dirty work ourselves when we jump on these digital bandwagons rush to judgment and share inflammatory posts without any investigation. The bots are bad enough. Let's not become bots for the bots. Now, if there is anybody who can help us find our way back to some humanity and some grace, it is my next guest. Please welcome to the Van Jones Show, Representative Joe Kennedy on the Van Jones Show. Oh, I love this guy. Finally got you. I got you. I knew I'd get you eventually. Hey.
You set the bar high on that one.
No. Hey, but you are in a position now in Congress. This Mueller report is coming to you. People are going to be running all over the place. How do you think about staying sober and staying strong in the face of this kind of hoopla that's coming your way with the Mueller report?
It is probably too much to hope that what Mueller's report is actually going to say is nothing to see here. Nobody did anything wrong. We got everybody already, and case closed. Yeah. That's what I hope it says.
And why do you hope that?
Because I really hope that what I think many of us fear about what has been alleged over the course of the past 2 years from those 34 people that are charged from all of those guilty pleas is an insinuation that there were people in the highest levels of a campaign that were engaged in nefarious activity to essentially mislead the American public and potentially elect a president that didn't actually earn every vote. And I hope that just did not happen. I hope that is not true, because I don't want, for the sake of our democracy, for the sake of every single voter out there, whether you voted for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or somebody else, I want everybody to believe that that process has the integrity that we believe it should have.
This is why we love you, and you are weird. Listen, you should don't you want the partisan advantage? Don't you want to be able to beat him up? Don't you want to be able to redeem Hillary Clinton?
Whoa. He has given us plenty to beat him up for in office. We don't need the rest of it, right? And there has been, from day one in office and a transition in a campaign, plenty for folks that do not believe in the policy or the rhetoric or the example that Donald Trump sets for us to fire back at. You cannot say, over the course for this election now that is just gearing up, we cannot say that there's not going to be a choice before the American people in 18 months, and that folks have an opportunity to actually make that choice. That choice is going to be very, very clear.
Very clear.
And that is on us in order to seize it. But I hope that if it comes to one of the most nefarious accusations that somebody can say about the United States of America, the most powerful democracy in the world, the example that we hope we set for the world, is that somebody actually meddled with our democracy successfully. I hope that didn't happen. If it did happen, then they should be held accountable to the highest possible penalty of the law.
You know, you endorsed Elizabeth Warren right out the bat. Did you rush to judgment? You got a bunch more people jumping in now. You got Bernie jumping in. Your friend Beto might jump in. Why did you go so early for Elizabeth Warren?
I got a bunch of friends that might jump in. It is a little bit awkward when you have a bunch of buddies that are running for president.
Yeah.
And I might be one of the few Democrats that aren't going to announce on your show. My bad.
Next.
It's a great interview while it lasted, folks. Yeah. Wonderful to see you. So I think a couple things. One, I have had the opportunity to know Senator Warren back when she was a law professor. She was my teacher. I met my wife in her class. I took another class from her bankruptcy just because she was such an incredible teacher. I know her on a personal level. I have deep admiration and respect for the work that she has done. And Van, I think really kind of critically, of all of the candidates that are in this race or might get in this race, I believe that the most critical issue that we are confronting as a country is, in fact, an economy that is not working for everybody. You frame this a lot, and one of the reasons why I signed on to the Green New Deal is the way that you frame this, as trying to look at the big challenges we have in this country on climate change and an economy that's not working, and so leverage that economy to actually address climate. But it is that ineffectiveness, the inability of our economy to actually touch and inspire and get to leverage the potential of every single person, and to actually contribute back to the economic success of our country and the structural failures that our economy now has, that leaves all of those folks behind. There is nobody that has done more work on this for longer and deeper than Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, you care a great deal about the economy. You backing somebody who cares about the economy, but you care about so much other stuff. You guys may not have seen this. Show the video of you talking about healthcare and the way you talk about it, making it a moral issue.
Chairman, I was struck last night by a comment that I heard made by Speaker Ryan, where he called this repeal bill, quote, an act of mercy. With all due respect to our Speaker, he and I must have read different scripture. The one that I read calls on us to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless, and to comfort the sick. It reminds us that we are judged not by how we treat the powerful, but by how we care for the least among us. Mercy. There is no mercy in a system that makes healthcare a luxury. There's no mercy in a country that turns their back on those most in need of protection: the elderly, the poor, the sick, and the suffering.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. You know, it's a kind of poetry I don't think we hear enough from Democrats. And also, you're bringing in scripture. Why do you bring in these moral themes so often?
So, man, I think when it comes to healthcare, and almost uniquely in healthcare, there's, I think, just a critical moral dimension to it. And it is, my wife actually framed it this way to me, and she's a healthcare policy expert. She said, look, healthcare at its core is a moral question about how we treat the weak the moment that they are most in need, knowing that every single one of us at some point is going to need that system too. And so at that moment, what kind of system do we want there to protect us or a loved one? And that fundamentally is what differentiates our parties about the role of a federal government to make sure that that system is robust and there to care for you when you need it. And what Democrats believe is that that system should be as good for anybody as the system that you would want for your loved one. And Republicans say, let the free market solve it. Folks, the free market isn't going to solve this problem. If the free market could have, it would have solved it by now, and it just can't.
Yeah. You talk about this moral capitalism, and I'm trying to place you in this party. Okay, we got pragmatists, we got idealists, we got socialists. Is moral capitalism just a cooler way of saying socialism? is that what? I mean, help me understand.
No. Look, I think what it is my take on it anyway, is a reflection of a couple of realities. One, that an American economic system has brought more people out of poverty around the world over the course of the past 40, 50 years than any other system in human history. There is real value here that I don't think we can just pretend doesn't exist or pretend hasn't done good things. The problem is that particularly of late and domestically, that it's come on the backs of an American middle class that has seen their own economic advantage eroded for the advantage of other folks overseas. And that's, at its core, is an erosion of worker power and an ability of capitalism that is structured to actually empower employees and American families to be able to take advantage of their own talent and potential. And when reconfigured and restructured, that's what our system should try to unlock, not the greatest, not let folks that are already doing well do even better. And that's what we got today.
But the thing is, I mean, you're a man of faith, and we share the same faith, but you got faith in the government. You want the government to do all this stuff. And what makes you think at this point, looking at the crazy stuff that you guys go through every day, that America's government can do all these things that you want it to do?
Touche, right? So, look, that's part of why you have to, you recognize the government's not going to be perfect. And this is a long, hard, slow slog. The most optimistic person in Congress, without question, is John Lewis.
John Lewis.
John Lewis. Because, at least in my mind, this is a man who not only has led our country to pursue the change and become those better angels, but has bled for it. But has, over the course of his lifetime, seen us change and seen us be better. And part of that is government leading the way. Part of it is when it's not, you go out there and, as he says, when you pray, move your feet. You do not accept the status quo, and you just keep fighting and scratching and clawing and marching on every single day. And that's what we got to do.
Well, listen, I beautiful words, beautiful words. Y'all not move, something wrong with y'all. I think that was... Look, we got so much more to talk about with Congressman Joe Kennedy when we get back, including how does his family legacy shape his views on issues like immigration or marijuana and other issues when we get back. Congressman Joe Kennedy. We've had this whole big thing with the national emergency announced by the president about immigration, and now there's lawsuits and stuff. But you took the more human approach, and you went to the border where you saw these families being separated, babies being taken away. Talk about the impact of you as, from one of the most famous immigrant families, the Kennedys, going to the border and seeing what you saw.
then, so this one's hard, right? Went down to the border once at a rally with Beto O'Rourke. We weren't allowed in. Met a mom in Boston who had been separated from her child and was trying to get back to her baby. Made contact with others that were trying to do that, help support organizations that were trying to make sure that these families never got separated to begin with. And, you know, look, the folks that were working the facilities on the border, I think, were, on the whole, doing the best that they could to try to make sure people were getting the care that they need. But it never should have happened in the first place. Yeah. There's a facility in New York that I visited to, which had just hundreds of kids. That people there, I mean, these were child care professionals. They were doing the best they could, but they shouldn't have been in this position to begin with. I speak Spanish because I was in the Peace Corps in the Dominican Republic, and so you start just chatting with folks, and I'm not so sure everybody else there would expect that I speak Spanish. So. And I won't forget this, I don't think, for a very long time. There was a girl, probably 13, 14 years old, maybe a bit younger, who said that she was hoping to get to Boston where her relatives were and asked me to take her with her on the airplane because she knew I was going back to Boston. The story that my family still holds so dear on both sides of it, and more well known perhaps on my dad's side, my relatives came here because of an abject failure of government and a ruling class in Ireland during the midst of a potato famine, where there was actually more food grown to feed all of Ireland than was necessary to feed all of Ireland. But the British lords took it and exported it to Europe. And as a consequence of it, people fled all over the world to try to actually just meet a basic human quality of how do I create a better future for me and myself, and what risk am I willing to take? It is impossible then to understand, for me anyway, to understand a bit of my own story, to have spent some time in Latin America, to have gone down to Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador and Northern Triangle, to go to some of these places where people are fleeing from, to say that if they are coming here doing the most basic human thing that you can think of, and the most basic responsibility of a parent, which is trying to protect and provide a better future for your kid, and willing to take that risk to do so, that our response to it is to say we're going to separate families to punish you for making that trip, that we're going to build a wall that most folks would say is just a symbol anyway, because in order to make that effective, you need enabling technology and people and the rest of it. But the symbol to say this land is not open to you. And what's even worse is instead of recognizing that humanity, preying on the fact that you have no place else and no other choice.
I think about your grandfather, Bobby Kennedy, going and sitting with the farm workers. Cesar Chavez over some of these same issues. And you continue this legacy of sticking up for people. I can't understand why you guys care so much. Why do you care so much? I mean, there are other immigrant families that do not take the kind of position that you do.
People find a way to contribute the best that they can. And look, my family ends up being a bit more high profile than others, and so you have a platform to do it, and so some of that gets more attention.
But you, I want to talk about you. Why do you care so much? You know what I'm talking about? Listen, it's a remarkable thing. First of all, I'm going to tell you something. Yeah. You may not have figured this out. You are a straight white male with money.
I got that part. Yeah.
You shouldn't be a Democrat. I don't know why you're in our party. Like, if you look at the,
after the election in November, a close friend of mine, Democrat, Hispanic, came up to me, gave me a big hug, and said, "Man, I just want to shake your hand. There's not going to be very many of you straight white guys left in here. I want to see you on camera." Like, thanks.
Seriously, think about that.
Look, this was not all roses when Irish Catholic immigrants landed in Boston either, right? But there was the promise of this place is that working hard today means you can achieve something tomorrow. And the reality is, look, as a member of our government at the moment, House of Representatives, you stare out at the Supreme Court's across the street, and etched in stone says equal justice under law. And you know better than anybody, we have failed to live up to our values enshrined in the Constitution from literally day one. All men are created equal. We meant rich, white, Protestant, London men. That's it. But our history is actually improving on those words and recognizing the failures that we have made, but the progress that we have made too. And to know that if we are able to actually make a contribution to that, you can make this a bigger, brighter, bolder place, which is the place that I think everybody actually wants this place to be, and we can do it. It's going to take an awful lot of hard work.
Well, look, I mean, I think that, you and in your heart, certainly your grandfather, Bobby Kennedy, that's a Democratic Party that my parents believed in. I was born in '68. That was the year that, unfortunately, Bobby Kennedy was murdered. Dr. King was murdered. They tried to murder hope in America in that year, and it took a very long time for the hope to come back. What did you hear about Bobby Kennedy that you lean on today that gives you hope to keep going forward? Because you're just as strong with it now as he was 50 years ago.
The lesson that I take from my family, or a couple of them, is that this country is an achievement, and it is only achieved whenever all of us do our part. And those parts are going to be different, and those parts, some folks can do it in a more high-profile way, some folks do it in ways that might not get the notice, but each contribution matters.
Look, you're probably, like you said, you're the only prominent Democrat not running this year. And people do want to know what you think of next. Are you thinking about governor, senator? Are you happy where you are? I know you got little kids at home. That makes it hard to think about anything. But what's next for you?
Sleep and coffee. Right, sleep and coffee. Look, I do think there are a lot of issues out there that I'm passionate about, from mental health, which you mentioned a little bit earlier, and healthcare and immigration. I do think that the seminal issue that we have to address is an economy that does, in fact, see and recognize and empower every single American. And if we can empower an American populace 325 million strong, there ain't nothing this country can't do. Wow. And so I think the way that you do that, though, what President Trump has done is very powerfully segment our society into a zero-sum game where people are fighting against each other. What Democrats' job is to do is to convince, over the course of the next 18 months, every single slice of our society that Donald Trump is trying to divide and conquer, that those folks are, rather than fighting over the scraps of a system, that they are worthy of more than just scraps to begin with, and actually make this case that there's more in common with a coal miner in Kentucky and a fisherman in Massachusetts. But we don't do that by exploiting those families. We do it by empowering them and letting them help decide the next future for their own lives. We can do this.
Sounds like there might be a President Kennedy. Another one, possibly.
Coffee and sleep. We'll go for that. Coffee and sleep.
Well, thank you, Congressman, for being here. It means the world to me to have you here. Next up, the political comedian that is taking on some of the biggest issues in the United States and some of the most powerful governments in the world. Hassan Minhaj is going to be here when we get back. Welcome back to the Van Jones Show. My next guest is taking on big pharma, affirmative action, even the Saudi regime, all in the name of comedy. He made headlines earlier this year when Netflix pulled an episode of his show, The Patriot Act, in Saudi Arabia at the request of their government. But he is not backing down, and here's how he recapped the whole drama on his second season premiere.
Let's break down how I became an internet bad boy. According to Article 6 of the Saudi Arabian anti-cybercrime law, any content that impinges on public order, religious values, or public morals is prohibited. Of all the Netflix originals, the only show that Saudi Arabia thinks violates Muslim values is the one hosted by a Muslim.
Please welcome to the Van Jones Show, the host of Patriot Act, Hassan Minhaj. Rock star. Got a rock star. Well, hey, listen, I got so much to get into with you, but I got to ask you the question about Jussie Smollett. Obviously, you're a big star. He's a big star. You've been a victim of real racism, and you've come through it. It's a big part of your comedy. How do you feel knowing that he may have just made up a racist attack?
Yeah, I mean, the disappointing thing, and a lot of us have covered this, is that it's going to negate future, real sort of people coming forward and sharing their story and people sort of doubting it. That's the disappointing thing, is how that becomes a data point that's then used against other real victims.
Yeah.
That to me is the most disappointing part.
Yeah, were you surprised?
the way in which all the plot points were unfolding, it felt like I was watching a TV show. Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
But it was as things started to unfold that it started to really bum me out. It's disappointing, and it's not just to me. It's one small case that's indicative of a larger sort of problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope that people will recognize that these hate crimes really are rising.
Yes.
And I hope that people will keep that in mind.
Yeah.
You have decided to do something that is in the real world quite heroic, possibly reckless, possibly crazy.
Okay.
Why you still messing with the Saudis, man?
Oh, man.
I don't understand.
Look, I know. My parents tell me the same thing.
Yes,
they're like,
they are correct,
look,
sir.
Yeah, like, and I get it. Like, here's the thing: when the episode got pulled, I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm not built for this beef. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I barely fill in these mediums. I'm not ready to go head to head with dictators or autocrats. So I'm sorry in advance.
Exactly.
Like, I want to live to see the retweets. All right? I'm not, because everyone's coming up to me, man, this is the bravest thing you could have ever done. I'm not trying to be comedy's Tupac. I'm not.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we addressed it at the top of the show, and yeah, so I'm going to do the best I can to not poke anymore.
I mean, in all seriousness,
Yes.
I mean, this is a brutal dictator. I mean, would you be able to complete your Hajj? Would you be able to go back to Mecca? I mean, how do you think about? Listen, you're a comedian. You're also a Muslim. You're a human being. Yeah. How do you think about the impact on your real life? Can you go there?
So look, I have to just make personal choices and professional choices, and that's the tough thing that I think a lot of people sometimes don't understand. You know, I think we take it for granted here. Safety is something that we take for granted here in America. I'm not the real victim here. The victims are the activists in Saudi Arabia, the journalists in Saudi Arabia, dissenters who get sort of silenced. I'm fine. I got 60 new Instagram followers. I'm great. You know what I mean? I'm like, I got the blue check. I'm great. So the heartbreaking part is, yeah, you know, if I speak out about certain things, will I be able to
travel to do your thing?
But I think God understands.
Oh, I hope so.
I hope so, you know?
That's deep. That's beautiful. That's
yeah.
beautiful. Did you feel let down by Netflix?
Well, to be fair, Netflix let me say what I wanted to say. So that I appreciate, right? The philosophical debate, the reason why this became an international case study is how are the big 5 tech companies that are now bigger than countries themselves, Netflix, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, how are they going to interact with otherwise questionable regimes? Look, I mean, my show's cool. It's not that popular. It became a thing because it's now this case study of, okay, so now Apple, you want to go into China. Can you write episodes in your dramatic series that are maybe negative of the CCP? Are you going to pre-censor? Are you going to post-censor?
Right.
Where's the line? We're going to see a lot more stuff like that in the future.
Well, that's true about the tech companies. It's also true. I mean, you talk about the safety or whatever, but you know, Donald Trump says he wants retribution against Saturday Night Live. I mean, that seems bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good. How did that land in the world of comedians?
I mean, look, for me, that's why I always defend satire, like through and through. Unfortunately, even will defend bad jokes because the good, meaningful ones also need to be there too.
You think about the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Right. They're now not going to let the president's not coming and the comedian's not coming. So I guess we have to go for the food. I don't know. That's really
I mean, you were there when I did it, man, and the food's not great.
I know, exactly.
It was lukewarm. But here's the way I say it. I say it this way: comedy and jokes, they have an impact in ways we could never imagine. So sometimes I think people assign too much value where they're like, yo, you're the voice of the revolution, Hassan Minhaj. And I'm like, relax, man. Like I do my little show in a little black box studio. People see it. You know what I mean? That's, you know. But the impact of jokes occur in ways we could never even imagine. Who would have thought a throwaway line by Hannibal Buress, doing just crowd work with the crowd in Philadelphia, would lead to a perp walk
for Bill Cosby?
Who would have thought, right? Or an eyeshadow joke by Michelle Wolf would lead to where we are with the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But at the same time, I've said a million jokes that don't lead to massive political or social change. You know what I mean? They have impacts in ways we could never imagine. So that's the way I think of it.
Part of the reason I think people are so excited about you, first of all, there are just not that many Muslims who have any platform, let alone young and cool and all that sort of stuff that you get accused of being.
Thank you, man. You didn't read that from a prompt. the prompter just says blank, so
Exactly.
that was from the heart.
That's from the heart. It's
Yeah.
truly from the heart. But you arrive at it in such an interesting way because you say you're an insider and you're an outsider.
Yeah.
You know, your family is an immigrant family.
Yes.
Muslims from India.
Correct.
But you were born here.
Correct.
And so you're an insider.
Yeah.
But you're also an outsider. Just talk about that a little bit and how that affects your whole approach to comedy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, growing up, you feel this sort of X-Men mutant feeling where, you know, you have these two lives where it's like, yeah, I'm a child of immigrants. I speak this one language at home, but then I speak this other language in school, on the playground with friends. And I sort of have to bridge those. You started laughing, right? Like, yeah, like it's like we have two different identities. When I first watched X-Men, I'm like, I know what that's like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mutant, but you just M-U and S-L-I-M, you know, but I get it. And I totally understood that, right? But that's actually great fodder for comedy, that pressure, that feeling of like, hey, like, where do I fit in, you know? And that, to me, has worked to my advantage on the show, and also having the show and it being in 190 countries.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of countries that look at us from the outside, and I'm waving to them like, hey, I'm an outsider too. I don't get it either.
Yeah.
But then I'm also able to communicate with people because I'm just as American as they are.
Yeah,
and I think it's a cool sort of dynamic.
It's awesome, man. You're a bridge builder in a world where people are trying to build walls, and I want to talk with you about that more when we get back. Including, I want to talk with you about which 2020 candidates you might like, who you think might be the best fodder for comedians, and also, what exactly is the Brilluminati? I want to know what the Brilluminati is when we get back. All right, welcome back to the Van Jones Show. I'm here with comedian Hassan Minhaj. Pretty good?
There we go.
Okay, good. All right, good. Very good.
Yeah.
I know it's hard.
But you did it the way people order, like, you know, certain people go to a Mexican restaurant and they're like, let me get a burrito. Hassan Minhaj. Look, man, I'm just glad to be on CNN, and I'm not yelling over 17 other players.
Hey, listen, I'm glad to have you here.
Sometimes when I watch CNN, it feels like I'm picking a player in Street Fighter. Ryu. All right, cool.
You got a show, this Patriot Act show.
Yes.
It's a big deal on Netflix.
Yeah.
You're going into this thing. Are you going to stick with issues now like you've been doing? Or are you going to start talking about some of these candidates? How do you deal with a show like yours headed into a presidential election?
So for me, like, I'm really interested in, you come from The Daily Show, we would do a lot of coverage on the day-to-day.
Right.
I'm really fascinated with the problems themselves, not the symptoms. You know, I really don't want to be in the business of tweet chasing or, you know, making a meal out of a gaffe and following the sort of day-to-day stuff that happens.
Why not?
Because you end up, it feels like sugar, man. It's really fun, man. Like watching someone slip up and say something silly on CNN or whatever.
Sure.
It's great. You can do 6 minutes of jokes, but then when you walk away, you're like, what's the greater takeaway? So this weekend we're doing a big thing on student loan debt. To me, that impacts a lot of people's. Does anyone here have student loans? Yeah. There you go. All right, there we go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Versus like, hey, did you see the Covfefe? Like, that doesn't. Yeah, you have a few laughs and then you keep it moving.
Right.
You know. And so to me, talking about stuff that actually really, really does impact people's lives, and you can walk away from the episode with a piece of information like, oh, I've never thought of it that way, or thank you for talking about that issue.
You do come out of this incredible university of Jon Stewart, and you were the last of that bunch. You know, you were like the last one hired, and now you're out here doing this great stuff. What was it about that environment that has produced so many stars out of the Jon Stewart Big Bang?
Okay, so I'll tell you guys, this is the secret sauce. The real secret sauce is this, is for the longest time as a comedian, I just thought you just got to do jokes. That's it. Just, you know, think of as many funny jokes as possible. It's a volume game. You got to be the Allen Iverson of jokes. Just put up a lot of jokes. The thing that separated Jon and made that show so revolutionary was take. What's your take? What is the way you can condense the information and slice it in a comedic take? That's why people tune into these shows.
You know, you're not going to do a lot on candidates, but there's at least one candidate I got to get your take on, Kamala Harris. everybody talks about her as being the, possibly the first black woman.
Right.
But she's also half Indian.
Yeah.
Since people are trying to put people in these different boxes, this is the female candidate, this is the gay candidate, this is whatever.
Right.
Does the Indian community feel about Kamala Harris any particular way, or is she kind of like a neither nor? I'm just curious.
No, because you don't know this. The Minternet, they rock with Bernie hard. Right? You don't know the Minternet is the Muslim internet. It's like black Twitter, but for Muslims. It's popping, right?
People talk about black girl magic, black girl magic, black girl magic with regard to Kamala. Does she have like Indian girl magic too, or not so much?
I don't know. I haven't checked in with the Illuminati yet. So.
We are going to find out what is the Illuminati. What is it?
All right, so the Illuminati is a group of brown artists that have Trojan horsed their way into this thing called show business. Okay. So I'm talking about Mindy Kaling, Riz Ahmed, Kumail Nanjiani. Like, it's like this group, Ari Kondabolu, these group of sort of South Asian, brown, Middle Eastern artists that have started to make waves in the industry. Yeah, and I call it the Illuminati.
I see. I'm going to tell you something. Conspiracies are supposed to be secret. Okay, so you may have ruined the whole point.
That's why I'm bad at being in secret societies, because I'm the first dude that'll run out and be like, "Yo, I just got inducted. We out here!" Like, I'm throwing up all the signals and that's why I tend to get in trouble. Oh, these are very flattering photos of me. That's very. But you guys picked that boy band, sort of, that like emo sort of.
You call yourself an angry optimist.
Yes.
And I mean, first of all, you don't seem that angry. You mainly have us rolling around on the floor laughing. But talk to me about this identity that you have politically of the angry optimist. What does that even mean?
Yeah, like to me, look, nihilism I don't think gets you anywhere. You know, and being,
a lot of comedy is that though.
I know, man, but it's just not. It just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't sit right in my heart. It just doesn't. And I think, for me, I'm a child of immigrants. My dad, his position on a lot of things, he comes from a place of pragmatism, like just hardcore pragmatism. Right. You know what I mean? He's conservative in the sheets. He's liberal in the streets. You know what I mean? At home, he's pro-child abuse. He's pro-fear. You gotta be a doctor. Like, I'm fiscally conservative. Pull up your pants. All of that stuff. And then in the streets, he's like, hey, equality for all right? What about for your son? Not for my son, all right? But what I've learned from my father is you can be pragmatic, understand the rules of the game, but also then be optimistic too. You know, change is only possible with optimism. So that's how I've tried to navigate my life.
Well, listen, man, I'm so glad to have you here. I hope that you will come back. You can catch new episodes of The Patriot Act every Sunday on Netflix. When we get back, Democrats are pushing to raise taxes on the rich. Republicans say no way. Who's right? Who's wrong? How's it going to play out in 2020? You're going to learn all of that when we get back next. Thank you very much. 2020 candidates are already making really big promises on everything from health care to college tuition to paid family leave. And most of them say that raising taxes on the rich is how they're going to pay for all this stuff. Now, they throw out all kind of terms like marginal rates and individual assets and wealth taxes and all kinds of stuff I don't understand. This financial jargon can be so confusing that I created an explainer to break down a few of the most popular proposals. Take a look.
An ultra-millionaires tax to make sure that rich people start doing their part.
Of course taxes should go up for them.
They need to pay more taxes.
Many Democrats say they want to raise taxes on the rich, but they got very different ideas about how to do it.
One of the most effective ways to stem income inequality is through a marginal tax rate on the highest brackets of income.
Let's start with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's call for that 70% marginal tax rate that caused so much controversy. Here's how that would actually work. You're probably familiar with tax brackets. Now, some people might think when they see this chart that a person making $80,000 a year gets 22% tax out of their whole salary. That's not actually how the system works. Instead of brackets, it's probably more helpful to think of our income tax system as a series of baskets, all right? So let's say you make $80,000 a year as a single person. The first $9,700 that you make is taxed at a marginal tax rate of 10%. So that's $970 for Uncle Sam. The next chunk of your income, up to $39,475, is charged at a marginal rate of 12%. And the rest of the $80,000 is taxed at a marginal rate of 22%. Right now, The highest marginal tax rate is 37% for all income over $510,301. That means a person who makes $600,000 is effectively taxed at the same rate as somebody who's making $600 million in income. Ocasio-Cortez is proposing adding another basket, so any income over $10 million would be taxed at a new rate of 70%. But a lot of people have problems with this.
To pave the way for socialism, Democrats are calling for massive tax hikes.
Even those who agree that the wealthy should pay more in taxes.
These great fortunes were not made through ordinary income.
Bill Gates is right. Many millionaires and billionaires don't earn typical salaries, and therefore they don't pay much in income taxes. Instead, their wealth comes from assets like stocks and real estate and interest on savings. Both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren each have plans to increase taxes on assets. Elizabeth Warren would create a 2% wealth tax on Americans who own $50 million or more in total combined assets, and 3% taxes on every dollar of assets above $1 billion.